Hi, this is Kevin Carbot from Tom's Hardware, and I'm here with Dr. Richard Marks from PlayStation, or Sony, and he is working with the PlayStation VR headset. And could you give us a little bit of a background of what exactly it is that you do for Sony? Just a brief outline.
That's what a lot of people wonder.
Yeah.
No, so I work in the R&D space. I'm the director of the PlayStation Magic Lab.
Okay.
And we take new technologies and explore how you would turn them into kind of experiences. Sometimes it's internal technology, sometimes it's third-party technologies.
Okay, so my understanding from your presentation earlier is that you've been working with PlayStation or with Sony and on the PlayStation platform for several years. 16?
16.
Yeah, so you've gone through many iterations of different pieces of tech. How long would you say you've been working on VR-related technologies?
Well, like I kind of explained in my talk today, actually, everything we've been doing is still relevant to what's going on in VR. Since I've been there for 16 years, all that stuff is relevant. The official project for, PlayStation VR started in around 2010, late.
Okay, so that's actually quite a while ago. So
yeah.
That's almost like you would have had a head start on even Oculus at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were doing it once PlayStation Move came out. Some of the internal researchers were putting it on their head and doing head tracking with a display in front of them. So it's a very, low-end VR system, basically.
Rudimentary start.
Yeah, and so they were looking at what you could do and what kind of experiences you could achieve. Some of the guys in Santa Monica tried out what it would feel like to feel like you were Kratos in God of War. And
okay.
So that was very compelling.
That's pretty cool. So you guys have been working in this space for some time. Did you anticipate that the PlayStation 4 was going to be powerful enough before the PlayStation 4 came out? Or was it something that you kind of figured out after it was already there, that you could finally make this a consumer-ready product?
I think that it wasn't a surprise. I mean, we were designing the PlayStation 4 kind of at the same time as we were doing this, so
okay.
Trying to match up the power and the kind of everything together. I wouldn't say we had it all completely figured out perfectly, but it was, a consideration that was taking place. All the things kind of go together in a way that seems to make sense.
Yeah, so one of the things that you guys are doing with the PlayStation VR is like a social aspect where you have multiple players, with one in VR and then others not in VR. Now, it seems interesting to me that the PlayStation is able to render all of that at one time. Was that part of the plan when you developed the PlayStation in the first place, to make sure that it could handle both displays, or?
No, so that part of it, I mean, there's no special sauce there. The PlayStation is a pretty flexible internal system, so you could people render things to off-screen buffers all the time, right? So
okay.
Then we just have to put it into a stream that HDMI can then handle when it gets separated by our box into one for the TV and one for the headset. So the fact that we can render to two places, lots of games have been rendering things to two different places and using the texture in off-screen textures and things like that.
Okay, so you just brought up the box. I was going to get to that. You haven't really talked a lot about what that does or what it is. There's a lot of rumors going around that there's some sort of extra GPU inside there. Can you speak to what exactly it does and whether or not that's true?
So the box, basically you have an HDMI signal out of the PlayStation, and we want to send video up into the headset, but we also want to be able to send video into the TV, so we have to split it.
Yeah.
And we want to send the best possible video we can to the headset, so we get everything ready for the headset, and then that wouldn't look good on a TV. So then the little box is basically taking that data and making it so it would look good on a TV.
Okay,
again.
So it's basically rendering it back to how it would have looked if you weren't working.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is a little funny that way. But we have to have some kind of box to do the split anyway, so having a box is a necessary component. And then it's also doing our 3D audio right now.
Okay, so the Breakout Box as it is that more or less what we're going to see in a retail product, or is there still some changes to be done with that?
Yeah, I don't know if the final design is exactly finished, but its capabilities and its features are finished.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And it also takes in the sensor data from the headset and gets it ready into a USB format it goes into the PlayStation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the PlayStation VR is using the same sort of light tracking as the Move controllers.
Similar. I mean, it is based on visible light.
Yeah.
Although these are very special, nice spherical objects, so they have a very simple kind of mechanism for tracking. This is a pattern of different lights, so it's a little bit more complex actually, but it's very similar.
Okay, and did you guys find that there was trouble making the headset track correctly, or was that just kind of natural once because you already had the light tracking technology?
It uses, like, again, a lot of the same things. There are things like, because, I mean, the Move was designed to have a sphere because spheres are really nice in that you change the orientation and you don't see any change in the visual, so you always have a really nice, easy thing to find.
Okay.
With a PlayStation VR, you know, when you move it, sometimes one LED gets occluded and is gone, and now another set of, you know, LEDs is visible. So you kind of have to keep track of what pattern is going to be visible at any given time.
Okay.
You don't really have to do that kind of stuff for the Move.
That makes sense. So, what kind of experiences can we expect to see when the PlayStation VR actually comes out? Like right now, you're showing off the London Heist demo, which is compelling and it was a ton of fun. But are we going to see that sort of thing as the home-based experience? Are we going to see more interactive experiences or less interactive experiences? It seems like a lot of the demos we're seeing from other platforms are less interactive at this point, but this one was very interactive.
Right, we're really focused on games, so at the launch we'll have a good suite of games.
Okay.
And that'll probably be a wide variety of games. So we have some puzzle games, we have like an action game like this, we'll probably have some form of a racing kind of title. I mean, we like to have a good breadth for a platform so that something that will appeal to everybody.
Okay.
And I think we really do feel like interactivity is a key element of entertaining VR gaming. So.
Well, it's gaming, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so with the PlayStation VR, you guys are using a 1080p display, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so that's quite a bit lower than what the PC level headsets are advertising at this point.
It's a little lower.
Well, a little bit lower. It's one single screen versus what the other guys are doing is they're splitting it. So
some of them are doing that, some are not. But yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So one thing that I noticed while playing it is that the visuals were really clear. So can you explain how you guys managed to get them so crisp? Like I didn't experience any screen door like you see on the Oculus DK2, which is essentially the same resolution.
I guess not every 1080p is the same is one thing. So ours has 3 sub-pixels per pixel, so there's a true R, G, and a B for every pixel.
Okay.
And some of the other displays actually don't have a full R, G, and B for every pixel, so they have less sub-pixels per pixel.
Okay.
It's a little technical, but then also the frame rate of ours is very high, and that helps a lot and makes things. But probably the biggest effect overall is the optics are really good. The optics, the guys in our optics department that are designing that have done a really good job at matching the optics to the field of view to the screen.
So is it the same guys that are doing the camera optics that did the optics for this?
Those people are involved in the process.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense. There's decades of optical technology with Sony. So you mentioned the frame rates. So recently Sony mentioned that or announced that the screen is capable of 120 hertz, but my understanding is there's multiple different frame rate targets for developers to shoot for. Is that correct?
Right. So there's the screen can do 120 frames per second, and a game can render that out of the PlayStation 4, or they can render 60 frames per second, and then we do something called reprojection to take it from 60 to 120. The screen's also possible of doing 90 frames per second. So. Okay. Some of the other systems are doing 90 frames per second, so they could keep the same frame rate and they wouldn't have to change their game design or anything to bring it over to PlayStation 4 or to move from PlayStation 4 over to the other place, if that's the way they would choose.
Okay.
So we're trying to be flexible for the developer to get to pick what is best for their game.
That makes sense. I'm a little curious about that, how the PlayStation's able to do that, because a lot of games nowadays are targeting the 30 frame per second frame rate. So are we going to see lower graphic quality in VR games, or is there ways to mitigate that?
Well, there's fundamentally a limit to how much graphics you can create with a given amount of time. So if you have to choose how you use your graphics budget. there are things in VR that are different than they are in a regular screen, and you find that some things make the scene feel richer in VR than it might feel like on a 2D display sometimes, and a lot of it has to do with depth, because when you're moving your head around it and you have a lot of parallax happening, you get a very strong effect in VR. So having more geometry tends to be better, you know. So I think there is no magic bullet here. It's not like we suddenly magically double the performance or something, right? But it is, so the developer will have to choose how they decide. Some developers will want to go for more richness in the graphics, and they'll probably choose to render at 60, and then it'll be reprojected to 120. Other developers will really want to go for the ultimate kind of clean, high-speed feeling, and they'll render straight out to 120.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, PlayStation VR is supposed to come out in the first half of next year. Is that correct? Okay. So if someone wants to see it or try it, is there any opportunities coming up for that for the public?
That's a big challenge for us. We are showing it at different events. We have the PlayStation Experience coming up soon in December in San Francisco. So that's likely to be. I don't know if we've announced exactly what'll be there, but
if you want to try
we
it,
had
go
it there
to San
last
Francisco.
year. We had it there last year at the PlayStation Experience. So
perfect. Okay, so with the with console lifespans, they tend to last a long time. Like the previous generation was almost 10 years, or at least going on 10 years, and PlayStation 3 is still around and still being supported. With PS4 being out for, 2 years now, it's obviously got a long time to go still. How do you guys see handling the market when PC VR headsets get to the second or third generation in the next 2-3 years versus where you guys are at with yours? Do you see a new iteration, or is this going to be the product for the lifespan of the PS4? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's a similar situation to the entire console. I mean, the console comes out and everyone says, oh, it's going to be obsolete because PCs will pass it up and be more powerful.
That's not really the case.
Right, it's not the case. So consoles come out and they're, you know, pretty powerful, and then the game developers figure out how to get more and more out of them as it goes. And so by the end of the life cycle, that's when you're still seeing the best games possible. I think the PlayStation VR is very well matched to the PlayStation 4, so it'll really kind of follow its life cycle quite well. And I think you'll see as people get more out of the console, the VR experiences will similarly get better and make the PlayStation VR seem like it's getting better. I think that same kind of thing will happen with the headset as is happening with the console.
That makes sense, yeah. Generally, every console tends to do that, so yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for talking to us.
Sure.
It's been excellent.
Thanks.